Hello, everybody. Welcome to a training, mental health community training part one. My name is Mohammed Abdi Habib Mahmoud. I'm a counselor and psychotherapist. I'm a former youth worker. I've been working with people for over 20 years in different capacity. So I call myself humanistic. And hopefully you will benefit from this training. First slide. What is mental health? Very good question. Mental health is all-encompassing term that refers to emotional and psychological well-being. The definition of mental health in the National No Health Without Mental Health policy is that a positive state of mind and body, a feeling safe and able to cope with a sense of connection with people, community, and the wider environment. So basically, wherever you are, you know that you can give back to your community. You know that you can connect with people. You know that you trust yourself, that you are somebody who's worthy and capable and and has something to give to everybody and comfortable with your own skin, for better for worse. So the best that you can be is yourself. So that is what mental health means: trusting yourself and able to feel comfortable in your own skin. Nobody's perfect, but you're happy with yourself in some context. Mental health can be influenced by several different factors, including genetic, environment, diet, and biology. So what it means is that basically we're all addicts. So there's addiction which is acceptable and addiction which is not acceptable. So one of the things which is acceptable, if you have been binge watching for the last 8 hours on the internet, nobody's gonna look at you any differently. But if you say I've been drinking alcohol for the last 8 hours, people would think you're an alcoholic. So most of the time, what we have to look at is that what our habits, what can think can affect our habits. So if we're watching a lot more of internet, if our environment is quite stressful, if we go to work, if we're going through divorce, if we are actually if you're a young person, if you're getting bullied, these are all environmental and basically habits that can affect your mental health. Genetics could be your family DNA. If your family is affected, if you have a genetic kind of like your mom or your dad have mental health and all of that, so it's something which is genetic. You need to be aware of it and look back on yourself. What are the things that is affecting my mental health? So this is something that is all encompassing when it comes to mental. There's only one thing that affects you. Mental illness health is a very common. It affects 1 in 4 people in the course of their lives. So 1 in 4 of us are going to be affected mental health in any aspect of our life. The impact starts as early as onset of mental illness often starts in childhood, adolescence, and young adolescents and young adults. So this is something that we need to understand, that it's not only something that it can come in out of nowhere, but majority of the time it does come back to our childhood or our past, affect our present. But the access to skill assessment and excellent treatment is limited. That's true because the waiting list at the moment is up to 6 months. So you can imagine there's a lot of people that go in that actually are slipping by. The majority goes untreated, the majority of people go untreated. On average, only 30% of those with ill health have access care. So only 30%, only 30% of people will find basically the treatment. And out of that 30%, it will sometimes won't even be adequate because the NHS is stretched out at the moment. What did the statistics say about mental health? One in four people experience mental health issues each year. 7,092 million people are affected by mental health issues worldwide. At any given time, 1 in 6 workers age adult have symptoms of associated with mental health illness. Mental illness is the second largest, now listen to this carefully, yeah? Second largest source of burden or of disease in England. Second largest source of burden of disease in England. So we have to look at it. It's very big deal. So how more than well, we can say more than half of NHS basically funding goes to mental health one way or another related to mental health, but yet the funding is still not good enough. So mental illness are more common, long lasting, and impactful than any other diseases, because most of the time there's no cure for mental health. But what we can do, or what psychologists can do, is to give you things to overcome and minimize the impact of mental health. But people do get the other side as well and come out of it cured, but it's not the general and basically standard. Men versus women. Mental health problems affect both men and women, but not in an equal measure. In England in 2014, 1 in 6 adults had a common mental health problems, but about 1 in 5 women and 1 in 8 men. From 2000 2014, the rates of common mental health problems in England is steadily increased for women and remain largely the same for men. In 2018, there were 6,507 suicides registered in UK, and in 2019 there were 500 and 5,691 suicides registered in England and Wales. Of those suicides, three-quarters were among men, and and which has been the case since the mid-90s. So for men, he has remained the same, but for women, he has been increasing, especially when you look at anxiety with women, he has been increasing steadily for a while now. The statistic in children and young people, 75% of people with diagnosed mental illness receive no treatment at all. Half half of mental health starts by the age of 15, and 75% will develop by the age of 18. In an average classroom, 10 young people will have witnessed their parents separating. In an average classroom, 8 will experience severe physical violence, sexual abuse, and neglect. And in an average classroom, 1 will have experienced death of a parent, and in an average classroom, will 7 will have been bullied. So if you look at this, you have a lot of our youngsters are dealing with all different aspects of life, and we need to able to be aware any of these issues can affect the young person mental health, especially if they're not getting the right support from home, or the home is chaotic. This can really impact on young people's and mental health. So as adults and caregivers, we need to be aware of the changes of those young people that we're working with, even those who are under our roofs as well. The statistic in the workplace. Um, one in 6 workers will experience depression, anxiety, problems relating to stress at any one time. So 1 in 6 of us will actually experience depression and anxiety due to stress. Um, there were 602,000 cases of work-related stress, depression, anxiety in 2018 to 2019 in Great Britain. One in 5 people take a day off from due to stress, yet 90% of them will use another excuse for them being absent from work. Um, People with long-lasting mental health condition lose their job um, lose lose their job every year, at least around double the rate of those without mental health, and this equals to 300,000. This is a population is equal to population of Newcastle or Belfast. Just imagine, 300,000 people will lose their job, just double the amount. So if you look at people with mental health and people who don't have mental health, this is double the amount. And this is a rate equivalent to Newcastle, Belfast. So you can understand how mental health can really impact on the financial basically of the household, and poverty can increase mental health. So you can't really separate mental health as one aspect of life. We need to be aware of every aspect of our lives. The states of BME groups. Um, Psychosis is more common among BME groups. Okay, that is that is something that surprised me when I saw it. But not really in a way, but it just proves what I really thought about it. Um, because most of the time, when you're not acknowledging mental health, we don't believe in talking therapy. The only time we see mental health is when it goes to psychosis or serious mental health. So this is one of the problems why stigma plays a bigger part dealing with mental health. And that's why the statistic within the BME community is so high. Young people from BME and BME minorities backgrounds are more likely to show or develop difficulty associating with psychosis and develop psychotic and disorders related to life. There is a growing body of research to suggest that exposed to racism may be more likely to experience mental health problems such as psychosis and depression. So racism can actually play a big role in basically when it comes to psychotic and depression. So why is this? Because we are part of the society. When the society tells us that we are not part of that society, we're not worthy of being respected. And every day when you wake up, you're actually fighting the tide. You're trying to prove who you are, what you are. And then when you get angry, people are telling you you're the crazy one. Of course, you're going to go crazy. And this comes under stigma again. People don't see that. So racism and mental health is correlating. It's something is impactful. Um, so people say, why does Black Lives Matter? Why is it important? Why is this? We have to look at it. When you look at these statistics, you realize it does matter because it impacts on the society, impacts on NHS, it impacts on every aspect of our lives. The detention rate under the Mental Health Act and during 2017, 2018 were 4 times higher for people people of Black and British background than the white counterparts. Again, you can just see like how much does that impact on a chest. Somebody who's on a detention, who's actually has serious mental health, and they have to be in a detention, is for them to come back from there is going to be 10 times harder. So this is something that we need to look at it, and we need to look at it in a deeper levels, and actually seek help in a very early stages as soon as we can. And those people support, and anyone who's doing this training should actually look carefully in any changes within their lives first of all, because we have to look ourselves and those around us. The statistic in refugees and asylum seekers. Refugees and asylum seekers may experience exclusion, marginalization, and difficulty accessing services. They are more likely to experience mental health problems and compared to the population, including high rate of depression, PTSD, and anxiety disorders. The increase of vulnerability to mental health problems that the refugee and asylum seekers faces is linked to pre, pre-immigration basic experiences such as war, trauma, and post-traumatic condition such as separation from families and difficulty in processing their basically asylums and poor housing. Data shows that they are less likely to receive support than the general population. So they're not only so asylum seekers actually have a, and not only are they mental health is impacted through war and basically and poverty and separation of their family, but when they come in here and culture, racism, trying to kind of understand the different culture, lack of basically financial stability, and the culture that we actually see. So, for example, when you look at Somali communities, the culture of being a Muslim, you're a terrorist, you're Muslim, you're black, you're not British, the culture clash between parents and children, all of these impacts is not the experience that a lot of parents would experience when they were back home. So when I see a lot of parents, what they'll say is that, or a lot of adults is that there's certain issue they never experienced. What does racism really mean? Being black and white. I remember coming to Britain. I never really experienced racism being different color because I came from a place where everybody was black. And coming in here, I'm a different color and I'm the minority. It was very overwhelming. So these are some of the issues that when it comes to refugees and asylum seekers, they're more likely to suffer from PTSD more than anyone else. And they're more likely to suffer from psychosis and all of that as well. Attitude towards mental health in Somali community. This research was actually I took part on this research uh, when it was being done. And young people show greater awareness of mental health issue than their parents. Yes, because they understand the words, but most parents don't understand the words of mental health. When you talk about anxiety, depression, there's a language barrier for parents to understand. Young people did not immediately name a problem with accessing services designed as the reason they had not sought out help. Parents' experience of mental health services were mixed. Young people did not mention concern about they mentioned young people did mention concern about shame and reluctance to discuss in private or personal matters. So the reason a lot of young people, especially from a Somali background, will will have difficulty accessing, especially counseling, is that sense of they feel they're betraying their parents. So when it comes to mental health, sometimes there's issues. Most of the time is relating to issues at home. So parents separating, death from the family, um, young brother addicted to alcohol or drugs or whatever, all of this shameful stuff that is taboo in our culture. So a lot of young people feel like if they go to counseling, they're betraying their families, they're backbiting their families. And in Islamic religion, you can't talk about somebody else, it's called backbiting. So there's a conflict between the religion and their own personal need. And this stops them from accessing and basically mental health. And on top of that, there's a lack of representative when it comes to cultural awareness. So a lot of young people or Somalis in particular, they'll find difficulty in seeking professional help because they kind of feel like that person doesn't represent me. And if a counselor represent them, they'll worry that person might take that information to the rest of the community, or by them, or they might know that person. So all of these issues stop people from accessing and basically the mental health facilities. The specifics and trauma and experience of mental health with Somali parents caused by the civil war in Somalia, and the journey to the journey as refugee, um, as a complex situation in the mental health. Next slide. So this is about the diagnostic manual. So diagnostic manual is the manual that psychologists uses to diagnose mental health. So in America they use and DSM-5. So DSM-5 is the diagnostic manual for America, and this is mainly quite well known. And even when I was studying, I probably knew basically DSM-5 before I knew ISD-10. And ISD-10 is the one that we use in Britain. And there's over 300 and different conditions listed in DSM-5 of mental health conditions. So there's no, we actually know quite common ones, but there's over 300 conditions of mental health. Can you just imagine that 300 different conditions? So you can understand that you can probably see someone that you met that has mental health and you wouldn't even know that it's a mental health condition. Most common mental health conditions. So we're gonna go to what are the common mental health conditions. So what's the first one? Let's look at it. Mild, moderate, and severe mental health problem. So there's three. So you have mild, moderate, and severe. So these are three aspects of mental health, which is divided. So the terms mild or moderate and severe are used to describe different level of mental health problems. A mild mental health problem is when a person has a small number of symptoms that have limited effect on their life. So when people have mild basically conditions, sometimes they can survive and not even go to therapy, and they can able to deal with it and put their own what you call it things in place to kind of help them out. But when it comes to moderate, then you definitely need help, or severe, then you definitely you need to take medication, because when somebody's on a severe, that is basically, it gets to a level of bipolar or schizophrenia or psychosis. That's the level serious. But mild and moderate, as a psychotherapist, I can deal with it, and you probably talking therapy can help. But when it comes to severe, unless somebody takes medication and that medication is stable, we cannot work with them. And this is a person might experience difficulty and different level of difficulty at different times. So hopefully this will make sense to you. Okay, we're gonna go to the next slide now. Depression. So depression, you can see I put slash on there. That means murugo. Murugo means, and in Somali with the word murugo means murugo. It means basically when somebody, it can be translated roughly to as what's that word I'm looking for? And murugo can be translated as grief. So it's prolonged grief, murugo. So depression can be translated as and basically a long an aspect. If depression, somebody can be diagnosed with depression when they have more than 3 months. So it's prolonged and sadness. So in Somali they call it murugo, and that the same word can be translated when people are going through grief. So depression, murugo is the same word. In Somali it's called murugo. Inshallah, hopefully that should make sense. The main symptoms are feeling low, loss of pleasure, and in things that were once enjoyable. So if you look at it, when you're going through grief, these are the same feelings that you're gonna you're gonna experience. These symptoms may be compiled with other, such as feeling tearful and irritable, tired most of the time, and change in appearance. The problem with sleeping, concentrating, and memory. When you look at it, if you're going through grief, these are gonna be generally the kind of feelings you're gonna experience as well. People with depression typically have a lot of negative thoughts and feel guilty and feel guilty, worthlessness, and they often criticize themselves and have lack of self-confidence. So this is another side. If you're going through depression for a long time, this is what is going to impact on your self-esteem. So if you look at the second part here, we're talking about guilt, worthlessness, and criticizing yourself and lack of confidence. So these are some of the things when I work with people, I try to build their self-confidence and give them affirmation, positive thinking, to get them out from that negative thinking. So if you really want to know when somebody has depression, it has to be chronic. Chronic means having that depression more than 3 months. So any symptoms that last more than 3 months, that means you have certain you have a chronic of that disease. Second one, we're talking anxiety in general anxiety disorder. The symptoms are having a number of difficulty, worries that excessive and out of basically out of control, or it doesn't make sense. Difficulty in controlling one's worry, one's worry, irritability, restlessness, tense of muscles, and tiredness, lack of concentration, and lack of sleep. These are all the signs of general anxiety disorder. And general anxiety disorder, I kind of call it, is a worry of the future. So depression could be worry of the past, anxiety could be worry of the future. One of the best way of dealing with it is trying to be in the moment. You have no control of what's going to happen in the future. You have no control of what happened to you in the past. But what's the most important thing is being in the moment, one step at a time. What am I doing right now? That's all that matters. Don't worry about what's coming tomorrow or what has passed. You can't change your past, you can't change your future, but what can change your future is your present. So that's one of the most important tools that you can give someone who's going through anxiety, is trying to get them to breathe and be in the moment. This is something which is I see a lot, a mix of anxiety and depression. So sometimes a person might be worrying about the future, and the other time they might be quite critical and negative of themselves and about what has happened or their past. And this can be very overwhelming and quite strenuous on a person. And when somebody's going through this, they definitely need to see a counselor or go to basically the GP and actually ask for help. Panic attack, and the main symptoms are having an unexpected reaction of panic attack, and also worrying about having another panic attack. So panic attack can be triggered by a place, or it can come out of nowhere. So if you're going a certain place that you had panic attack before, you might be worried to have another one. And a person can be diagnosed with panic attack if they have chronic panic attack. What it means is that if you have anxiety and you just had one panic attack, it doesn't mean you suffer from panic attack. It just means you have anxiety. But if you're going through the symptom that we're going through now, you're worrying about panic attack. You're constantly worried about the next panic attack that's going to come, and the next one after that, and the next one after that. And that stops you from generally doing what you normally do. Then you suffer from panic attack now. And so this becomes its own basically illness, and that can be called as chronic panic attack. So a person who suffers from panic attack, some might fear or want to avoid people, or it may it, or it may be they avoid a certain places, people, change of behavior, um, fear of being in a place where there's a situation that they cannot escape from. All of these issues can cause a panic attack. Sometimes panic attack can make a person not come out the house at all and just stay in the house because they're afraid if they go outside, they might have panic attack, or if they don't understand what panic attack is, they might feel like they're dying or they're having a heart attack. Obsessive compulsive disorder. The main symptoms are having thoughts of images or compulsive that keep coming back to their mind, difficulty to get rid of which is called obsessive and strong feeling that the person must carry out, or repetitive certain physical action or mental process, which is called compulsive disorder. And this is basically compulsive obsession includes fear and fear of dirty or grime, worrying that worrying something is not safe, such as electrical appliances, wanting wanting things in a particular order, the thoughts of fear of things harming someone else. Um, it could be as well basic excessive washing, cleaning, checking thing, checking things out. All of these things can actually increase your obsessive compulsive disorder, and this can impact in a person. And sometimes they can leave their house, go all the way halfway to the bus stop, and they might worry that they didn't lock the house. They know they locked the house, but because of this, that thought is coming back over and over and over again, they're forced to come back to check just to make sure that that thought goes away. So they have no control over the thought that they're doing. And they have to, if they don't repeat a certain times, they might think there's not clean enough or the germs are there. So this can impact on the person, especially when they want to go out or go somewhere. The timekeeping, it has a lot of impact on that. Um, Post-traumatic stress disorder. This is called in Somali, it's called Tiranyo. Tiranyo means post-traumatic stress. And this is one of the most common mental health that I see within a Somali community. Um, and this comes from generally excessive fear, psychologically and physically symptoms that can sometimes follow particular threatening or distressing event. So if you're in a quite distressing event, you can have post-traumatic. So imagine, and the best way I can describe is, imagine you're on a road and a car is about to hit a tree. You're feeling hopeless. You cannot control it. You just bracing yourself to die, and then you just wake up from hospital. That image every time is coming back like a flashback every single time. And every single time it comes back as a flashback, you are automatically taken back to that moment. So that's what post-traumatic stress means. So is having um, one of the most common symptoms of post-traumatic stress is that having a repeat of a repeat a repeat memory of the event. The repeat event. The this may be also this may also this may also be a feeling of reliving the event, flashback, or nightmare. So if somebody goes through an abuse or physical abuse, emotional abuse, they're reliving that moment every single day of their life. There can also be physical reaction such as shaking and sweating. So somebody might feel like hopeless, or they might if somebody been abused while they're a child, they can literally be like a child. They can squeeze themselves, kind of like form like like the womb of a child. They can almost form like a womb of a child and start sweating, and be transformed back to childhood. So they can be like a child automatically. So if somebody be shouted at and they face a lot of emotional trauma, that emotional trauma can set them back. Like there could be triggers to set them back to that moment. And this is a lot of people from our community have this. So they smell, a sound, a voice, even music. All of these things can be triggers to a flashback. And the only way to combat it most of the time is through therapy. And one of the things that can cause the flashback as well could be when you're tired, when you're weak, and when you're going through stress as well. Schizophrenia. Schizophrenia comes under serious mental health. Some of the symptoms are consistent with people. It is serious conditions that needs to be treated. they might experience hallucination and have delusions and hear voices. These can potentially put them in a dangerous situation, and if left untreated, it can it can, if less than treated, it can get worse. Psychosis is often a symptom of schizophrenia. So psychosis, we're going to cover this in the next slide. So schizophrenia is basically lack of connection to other people, is a condition which is quite serious and definitely needs, and is ongoing. It does not go away. Schizophrenia, people can have moments which are okay with medication, and sometimes they can go back to being serious, having a serious condition, and they might even need to be sectioned sometimes. Even when they come back, they might need sometimes to go back to be sectioned, because with schizophrenia, only medication can calm it down, can calm it down, and without medication, a person cannot. A counselor cannot deal with it because it comes under serious mental health. Psychosis is when a person loses some of all connection to reality. It it could be invoked hallucinations and seeing or hearing or thinking of, or it could be hearing or thinking, um, or delusions, or believing that things that are not actually true. The combination of delusions and hallucination, the combination of delusion and hallucination can really cause and serious harm to the person and change their behavior. Psychosis is often referred to as referred to as having schizo episode. Psychosis on its own is not it's not an illness like schizophrenia, but it can definitely have an impact on different. So somebody can have psychosis episode. Anyone can have psychosis. It can be triggered by stress. It can be triggered by tiredness. It can be triggered by a moment of serious emotional instability. But it's an episode. It's not an illness on its own. But it does. Psychosis does come under different illnesses. So when you're bipolar, a person can have schizo moment, which is they need to have medication or maybe even sanction at that moment. A social anxiety disorder, sometimes called as social phobia, cause an extreme fear of social situation. So people with social anxiety might have difficulty going to social events, or actually or speak in public, or always come to negative conclusion, feeling they're being judged, feeling that people are against them, and sometimes they can even react in situation unnecessary in situation in a way which is not appropriate, because they have an assumption what's really going on, because they think they're being judged, or people are against them, or they're being criticized, so they can always react in a negative way, or they might be overwhelmed in they might be overwhelmed in a sense of, if they go in a group, they don't know what to say, they don't know what to do. So social anxiety, what they will do is they will do anything and everything to avoid that situation. Adverse childhood experience has to do with your childhood experiences, the stress, trauma, childhood experiences such as physical harm, verbal harm, sexual abuse, emotional abuse, um, parental separation, domestic violence, mental illness, alcohol abuse, drug use, and imprisonment. All of these impacts that most of the time it happens to all of us. It happens to many of us in our lives. But sometimes with some of us, it can definitely have an adverse impact on us. And this is where you talk about attachment issues. That person might have attachment issues. They might not trust people. they might feel alone, they might feel abandoned, they might have difficult experience, they might feel like if I get close to anyone, what's the reason? Or when I used to work in a school, a lot of youngsters would say, what's the point of getting close to anyone when people are just gonna abandon me? So they feel abandoned and they find it very hard to get attached with people because their caregiver has abandoned them when they were younger or they didn't get the necessary and support. So these are the side the effect of in childhood basically trauma, and this is important to kind of look at when you're dealing with young people, especially those who are coming from um, who are in fosters and all of that will have adverse childhood experiences. So in somebody's working with that kind of field, we need to be very careful with it, and especially with our parents. A lot of youngsters might stay at home, but might experience gang violence. They might experience basically mental health illnesses, and we need to talk to our young people and actually see where their mindset is. Child mental health can develop mental health issues, and this is often a result of one or more various impact on the child well-being, um, abuse, neglect, and and not the needs not being met, being from an ethnic group, minority background, trauma, living in care, as we talked about care a while ago. Um, all of these issues can have an impact on the child, and ethnic minority as well, especially with racism. Um, understanding how they understanding all of these issues is very important, especially most of the time when I see people, they think that their past does not impact their present. And sometimes we do not see the world as it is, but as we are. We have to always look at it. Our past has an impact on our present. So we have to kind of like assess the children, especially when we talk about our community. You go a lot of single mothers, poverty, racism, identity issues. All our youngsters are dealing with all of this. Culture clash between children and parents, is something can actually have can cause childhood mental health. With most, I remember my mother. The only way she showed me, she used to say "I love you" is showing me food, but she never said "I love you." But if I grew up here, if I didn't have that experience of growing up in other countries, I understand this is the culture. If I grew up here and my mom never told me I love you, or kind of showed that really intimacy where a lot of young people, especially in a Western world, they kind of need that intimacy. And there's not the society to kind of nurture them because we're alone in the house. There's only PlayStation, TV, internet. That connection of grandmother, grandfather, aunties, all of that is really lacking. Parents need to be really aware and intuitive with their children. So these are one of the reasons why a lot of young people suffer from all of these mental health issues, especially in the Western world and especially with ethnic minorities. Just gonna move on to the next slide. Child mental health, common worries and signs of mental health issues. So we're just gonna go into what we discussed before and just go a little bit deeper. A sudden mood and behavior change, self-harming, and unexplained physical changes such as weight gain or weight loss, and a sudden poor academic and performance, sleeping problems, changing in habit such as changing habits such as withdrawing from friends and families. These are all signs that can say that something is not right, something is going on with that child or even your child per se. So these are some of the things that you need to understand. Isolation is something that I see a lot when it comes with boys, but sometimes when they're teenagers, that's quite normal. But you kind of have to understand that there has to be a limit. So you have to kind of like talk about it, have an open conversation with that young person. What is really going on? Is it because they're tired? Is it because they're just going through that time of the month? Is it because they're stressful and they just need some time alone? You need to have that communication so it doesn't get worse than what it is. If you leave them to their own devices, it can get worse than than expected. So what you have to do is always have an open communication with young people, especially with your children. And these are not automatic signs that they're definitely going through some kind of mental health. But as I say, having an open dialogue is very important, so you know what's really going on with that child, and if they with a young person or young adult, so if they need help, they can come to you. But if you don't have that communication, it will be very hard for them to come to you when things become quite serious.